Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another recording of Hearthstone. Today is Friday, June 14th. E3 is over. We are kind of in a good position because that means we don't really have to cover too much news. We need some Paladin victories, we need to play some Warlock class cards. So maybe we'll bounce between the two in ranked play. Let's see how well Warlock plays. There is oddly a lack of information and a lack of stuff that can, lack of things to really talk about on this Friday. So with any amount of luck, I will finish early. This is what I always hope for every time, though, and it pretty much never happens. But yeah, I'm thinking we might finish early, then that would give me enough time to do one or two last fall list cleanup videos. I finished the second half of games starting with the letter T, and quite frankly, the games starting with all the letters after T only really make up about 3 hours at most of content, so it's going to be kind of just a rush, which is good because that means inherently the fall list cleanup next time I have to do that, whether that is 6 months or a year later, and from some perspectives definitely I think it would be smarter to do it a year from now instead of 6 months from now. I think my standards are pretty high now, and so the fall list is not going to be as big as it was this time. Also, a lot of games got kicked from the wish list to the fall list, so there was a secondary reason that that so many games were on the list this time. And the only real issue I've had doing this is A, it takes a ridiculously long amount of time, and B, when I was doing the second half of games starting with the letter T, I was getting kind of emotionally drained at that point, and my decisions were becoming more generous than they had been up until that point. So there's a couple of games that I made double decisions on and left on the fall list when really I probably shouldn't have. There's still a couple of games that apparently I'm willing to have on the fall list even though they came out years ago and are still in early access. But other than that, I think it's going to be in a really good position. The Steam summer sale is on the verge of happening in the next couple of weeks, and my wish list is very much curated in the way I'd want it to be. Okay, so then I can do this, I guess. And then I can do this. And then
attack mode!
That. And that. That was a bad way to play, but whatever. I saw one of the YouTube channels I follow as I follow a lot, Layman Gaming, is they're a YouTube channel that's halfway, I think, towards being a mainstream video game source, and halfway to being an independent source. I heavily suspect that they might be a production funded channel. I think a lot of these channels that look like they're indie channels actually end up having funding from some major corporation behind them. So I don't think that there's really a lot of independent journalism going on in the video game world. But I will mention that they, in their coverage, a lot of their coverage is garbage too. It's very memey and just silly. Their coverage, they said they were very much surprised by how good Borderlands 3 is. That being said, I guess they are somewhat friendly, if not direct friends with Gearbox and Randy Pitchford, so they could be just shilling. So yeah, there's more evidence that Borderlands 3 is good, which is exactly what I want. I want Borderlands 3 to be good. It doesn't make a lot of sense to want to see the game fail. I guess in the long run it still doesn't matter because you've got that Epic Store exclusivity issue, so 6 months after the exclusivity window, I'll have to reevaluate how excited I am to play Borderlands 3 at that point. And in all honesty, I don't know how excited I'd be to play Borderlands 3 even if it wasn't an Epic Store exclusive, considering I haven't played the pre-sequel. Nobody really has played the new DLC, so everybody is going to be kind of forced and asked to play this new DLC for Borderlands 2 instead of just getting hyped and excited about the release of a new game. Otherwise, besides that mention, there's not, I think, a ton more to talk about E3. Overall, very disappointing year. I come out of it thinking that there is a good chance that Microsoft will be back in 2020. That seems almost certain because they're going to want to announce and show off their Project Scarlet game. So that would be a major reason to make sure they come back. And I think pretty consistently Microsoft stage shows are going to have way too many games on their store, on their show. So it's next year it'll probably be at least 60. I wouldn't be surprised if it's over 100 games for the Project Scarlet or Xbox Infinity or Xbox 2, whatever it's going to be called. I guess I'm going to have to learn to just call it the Scarlet for a year and then learn to call it its real name when that gets announced. But a significant amount of people didn't bother to do the EA showcase, and there seems to be basically nothing at the EA showcase that was mentioned that's worth mentioning. So major companies like Giant Bomb just didn't even bother to show up as far as EA's show that happened the day before. Nintendo, I think, definitely is the winner of E3, considering how they didn't have to pay to have a presence there and they showed the most amount of gameplay. The only problem is Nintendo, with their bring back National Dex issue with Pokemon Shield and Sword, have stirred controversy. And I don't know if you really blame that on Nintendo as much as you blame that on Game Freak, which is only partially owned by Nintendo. It seems like this is an example of the consumers of Pokemon feel like Game Freak are being very lazy by not bringing back all the Pokemon, or allowing all the Pokemon in the new game as they have been allowed in pretty much every previous game. And they're claiming that's because they'd have to animate them, and they're saying, well, that's still lazy. I think there is an argument to be said. If you compared this to the if you compared the 3D animations of Pokemon to live 2D animations and that technology, there's probably a major time saving and effort saving to make live 2D versions of your characters. I don't know how you could do that though with Pokemon, since they've already made the 3D models. It really is just going to would have had to been a case of either you bring the 3D models of the old Pokemon to the new game and you just live with it not looking that good, or you make a major effort to have like 8K 3D models and animations already made for the Pokemon characters always, and hope that lasts for a long enough generation that by the time you get around to having to reanimate something again, you've sold several generations of Pokemon. I think inherently you could have, I mean, it would be a really dangerous path to go to, but you could have a mass extinction event, or you could have a wall. Basically, you could have a thing saying we don't allow non-indigenous Pokemon in this land, thus we've blocked it. Or you could set it in a different generation, so that many of the Pokemon have just naturally died out thousands of years later. You could move things around in several different ways to explain away why the old Pokemon wouldn't be allowed in the new game, but it would be kind of dangerous, and it's not really the game you would want if you did that. So you kind of are just... They really just need to do the animation. And I am not super hot, as somebody looking out from the outside, I'm not super hot on the idea of getting these like shiny versions of Pokemon, or ultimate extra large versions of Pokemon. It seems like they're taking the game in a different direction, more into a gacha game than it really should be. So yeah, we have probably a decent amount of games that came out on Steam that I think are kind of low effort games. This would be, I guess, the first run of games that knew they shouldn't come out right in the middle of E3 when the hype would be the highest, but didn't have enough patience or wherewithal to wait more than a day. So we have a game on Steam here called Courage for a Kiss, and this animation style looks fine, actually. In a weird way, if you're going to do a cartoon animation style and not go super anime with it, this could almost become the new Western animation style. The only thing is the big eyes. But then you have a gun here, so I don't know if this is supposed to be some kind of visual novel that goes in a weird direction or anything like that. It's from an unrecognizable self-publisher. It's Tag Nudity. It's $8.99, and it's English and Polish as far as the language.
So many possibilities.
At least 2 to 5 hours of content, which is a small amount for a visual novel. Yeah, it would be really generous to put that on the fall list, but I kind of think I want to do it just for kicks. But that game in particular is probably a fine example of as good as it's going to get as far as games that came out. We may have some more recap stuff from TechRaptor, but there's not a lot of other news. There's people complaining about cutscenes and elements in the next Call of Duty, I believe it is. Seems like Call of Duty is kind of going for the hate bait and the outrage bait with their cutscenes that they showed. In the end, I think it's unrealistic to believe that the games will be in any way different than what they were before, or better than what they were before. Let's see. Deal 2 damage. Let's see. We talked about a lot of games, but now that blur from just yesterday, frankly, the wrap up of E3, it's just quickly getting forgotten. I spent most of yesterday sleeping and then being awake for a couple hours and then sleeping again and being awake for a couple hours. So I didn't even really get a lot of work done, but in the fact of just having slept on it a couple times, E3 has just turned into this blur of announcements with no announce dates and games that don't matter. And really, when I just compare this E3 to last year's E3, it's really just a case of a lot of promises that never get really delivered on. It's quite a ridiculous show. If you were really a person whose job it was to purchase or sign contracts to purchase games that will be sold in the future, like, I don't know what you could really do. That was the wrong one. So I have to kill that. But yeah. I saw an interesting article, and I think it's fair to mention that pretty much everything at the Sony show last year is like objectively a lie. Every single game at the Sony show last year had a release date of 2019 or 2018. They didn't come out. So not only could Sony not come back and have a show for the reason that they have very little to show, but they would have to be held accountable for their previous show being a complete lie. Now, honestly, I don't think Microsoft or any of the other stage shows handled it much better, but perhaps Microsoft... I do recall at last year's E3, at the very least, Microsoft did say Halo Infinite was not coming out next year. I think Microsoft has been pretty good about not misleading people to think, that Halo Infinite was coming out earlier than it actually what is, or at least is supposed to come out as. So that's slightly nice, I guess, to be honest. And I would say again, Microsoft showed 60 games and it felt like they only actually mentioned a release date for maybe 3 or 4 of those games. We didn't have anything that was too much like The Quiet Man this year. Nothing that was super weird and just out of nowhere. We didn't have anything that was like Days Gone, where it was getting, well, at least so far as we know, we haven't had anything that has been overly hyped and then is likely to turn into a game that's not that good. Although, you know, Gears 5 is probably going to be just another Gears game. Halo is probably just going to be another Halo game. There's not anything at the E3 this year that seemed like it was heavily trying to be groundbreaking. We didn't see any Year of the Pirate stuff, so no more pirate games. We didn't see any Year of the Bow stuff, and no more games that are bows and arrows.
Converting stored energy.
There doesn't seem like there's too much of a theme of any of the games where people are trying to copy them. Anyway, we saw very little horror games this year, which is fine. Very little zombie games, very little anything you'd call genre-esque. So, yeah. Overall, I feel really good about my decision to not really pay a lot of attention. I'm very happy I have not seen even a single scene of Devolver Digital's live stream. I feel like I'm constantly falling behind as far as trying to catch up on YouTube videos, and I feel like I caught up on YouTube videos during the week of E3 instead of wasted a bunch of time. Giant Bomb's in the evening wrap-up shows are useless, and they've always been kind of useless. There was one person that did mention that a lot of games get pitched at E3, so indie development companies go to publishers and try to pitch their games during E3 to see if somebody is interested. But that's all background stuff that nobody really sees anything about. It would be interesting to see if there was a way to make like a website where small game developer companies could make a TED Talk style game pitch and put that pitch online for people to see, but almost certainly the only way you could do that is if you had the game already out and for sale. There was talk about 2 Human being free for everybody and Xbox Games Pass, because 2 Human is the game that infamously was not allowed to ever be sold again due to lawsuits. Yeah, that's interesting that they were even allowed to release it, because I think that still would possibly irritate some people. But maybe there's money going to the right parties to make sure that goes through fine. I really kind of feel weird because I'm in this like zen-like attitude after E3. It's just like I am at peace. I am happy and content. Contentment is very much the word. Like I didn't spend a lot of time wasted on doing E3 like last year when I tried to stream it. I didn't get any views because I didn't stream it, but I frankly don't think I would have gotten any views anyways. So yeah, I'm just kind of happy. I'm just like, yeah, I think I did the right thing. I'm mostly relaxed. I am now capable of focusing my energy after today on finishing up the fall list cleanup and then getting back to playing Doom. And I probably need to schedule videos. I am running into that subconscious fear that I'm gonna run out of scheduled videos pretty soon. As things are still going, it still feels like, with the exception of Halloween month, I'm really probably only gonna have 2 games scheduled until I am at least 12 months ahead. And even if I was 12 months ahead now, I probably would want to keep moving forward so that I could change the release schedule around a yearly basis. That's pretty arbitrary though, just to say, well, I want to wait till the end of the year to change how I release things.
Reporting for duty. The battle.
There we go. Yeah, so the only one thing that could be going better with this attempt at a YouTube career is if I was making money. And the summer sale certainly is a consideration on that, because on one hand I probably shouldn't buy anything during the summer sale because I'm trying to buy a video card, and I'm certainly not going to be able to save up money if I spend it all at the summer sale. On the other hand, depending on what the gimmick is with the trading cards, I probably will spend $100. I have plenty of games, so there's not a great argument to talk about as far as the idea of buying more games, but there's still a decent number of games that I'd like to own. It probably would be a weird question to ask. Let's stay with Paladin because I want to get a victory back up. It's probably a weird thought to have and question to ask though. If there's really only about 1,000 more games on my wish list, and there's not really more than 20 or 30 games coming out per year that I want to own or play, I don't know what I really do with myself at a certain point. But I suppose the good news is I'll probably die of old age before I actually did play all of my old games or caught up anyway, so it's not something to worry about. Let's move on. TechRaptor has an article. The Destroy All Humans remake is a blast from the past. It seems like people who saw the trailer and who have fandom of Destroy All Humans seem to like this game. I could definitely see myself liking this game too, because a game where you play as an alien and you're like abducting people and shooting them is not a terrible thought. It probably isn't too unique of a game since it would be a remake of an old game, So you probably are just GTA style running around. But yeah, Destroy All Humans, in the fact that it's a remake, and in the fact of it being at least moderately popular, makes it a great game to put on the wish list if it comes to PC and when it comes out. Gamatsu has an article here. Catherine full body DLC, Persona 5 character Joker, and Phantom Thieves commentary set announced for the West. So apparently this is the secret announcement that they were talking about. So Joker is a playable character in Babel and Coliseum modes, as well as special commentary from the Phantom Thieves with full voiceovers from Persona 5. I would assume the commentary plays while you're playing the game. So this is an example of a video that we need to kind of look at first to get a better understanding of what you would be getting in the game. There we go. So let's see what this is. Partial nudity, sexual themes, that would be Catherine full body. So this is some character, I guess, from Persona, and my guess is he would just be playing the male character. It's just a skin for the male character, where you're just constantly trying to climb up. I'm always surprised when I see Persona as a game, not Persona as a game, but full Catherine as a game, because it's not a super interesting looking gameplay mechanic, but apparently it works pretty well. And my guess is that there would just be a voice commentary playing over that. Alright. This. And that. And let's go. And that. I would say E3 really not a major not a lot of major announcements as far as Eastern Japanese games. That's not super surprising. I still feel like the Japanese way of announcing games around the year at different events or just at random times seems to work better than one big convention. And even when Tokyo Game Show does happen, there is more Japanese games that get announced there than at E3. Let's see. I couldn't imagine that changing too much. There was a slight mention that maybe Microsoft should buy a Japanese company. I don't think Microsoft inherently succeeds just because they buy a Japanese company. I think there has to be a real learning period that would also accompany that, in which they took a significant amount of time to understand how Japanese companies work in Japan, and what games sell and what games don't sell, and what consoles sell and what consoles don't sell in Japan. And that some of that might very well be that if Microsoft bought out a Japanese company, the Japanese people themselves would stop doing business with it and people would stop working there. So that might not be great for a Japanese company either. Meanwhile, Nintendo doesn't have that problem because Nintendo is a and a Japanese company inherently. The headquarters is Japanese. So if they were to buy something like Platinum Games, which effectively they're very close to have already done, you won't really have anywhere near as many problems with that, with just transitioning leadership. Let's see. Kill that too. Tech Raptor has an article here. Scavengers might become the next big multiplayer phenomenon. I didn't even see this game, so I have no idea what Scavengers is. Although I would just argue that this is probably a hyper article. Yep. This looks like a battle royale with some survival elements and zombies. I'm not sure if that significantly changes the game. The darkness here, probably not something you would want. I think just for the matter of streaming alone, having settings where your game is in darkness probably doesn't work. That's probably why Fortnite and Overwatch look really bright and colorful and work pretty well. So, yeah. I don't have any faith in Scavengers. I really don't have a lot of faith that anything is going to come around and do what Fortnite did and create a major successful game. I think Fortnite is going to stay around for a while, and it'll be like the new Counter-Strike Go or the new Dota, and then I think we're very likely moving into a resting period where there won't be any major game, and instead people will just jump around from one big thing to the next big thing on a monthly basis for a year or so. Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article in the continuing question about how unique are the NPCs in Watch Dogs Legions. The article says Watch Dogs Legions NPCs aren't as novel as you might think. Here you have the old lady, and yeah, this guy, for instance, looks a lot like that guy. This guy looks a lot like this girl. It seems like they're mostly not as varied as possible. There's possibility that there'd be more of an update or a patch here, but yeah, visually, the outfits, the clothing, it seems to be kind of very simplistic for such an open world game. And I kind of have to wonder if Ubisoft really is trying to make a open world game on the cheap, because frankly that might be the case. Like, that they're trying to make a GTA style game without putting a lot of polish on it like a GTA game would be, to potentially make some big money with less work on it. Well, there goes my rank. So I'm not winning very much today. Let's see, is there HS replay Warlock? Let's try that. Maybe that's why I'm not winning. Moving on, Game of Citra has an article. Get a job. Backflip Studios is hiring a senior cloud software engineer. That's in Boulder, Colorado. Let's try to burn through all these.
I must protect both.
There's a game on Steam here called Age Old Cities VR. this might be one of the games that, yeah, this is from Ubisoft, and they're in partnership with some organizations. They're trying to scan or have people design ancient cities and ancient monuments that don't exist anymore, so that there's a digital record before. Let's face it, a lot of these ancient structures are getting destroyed by war or terrorism or ISIS in particular, destroying ancient world treasures. This looks interesting as a VR game. It looks interesting as a VR project, not really interesting as a VR game. I'll put it on the fall list. I don't know if you really need VR to play it. So it seems like there's a VR mode and a non-VR mode to it, so yeah. This really is a game that probably deserves more just a follow than anything else. So, yeah.
Why do you fall?
I wouldn't be surprised though if I also took it off the follow list next time I did a cleanup, considering it's not much of anything. Next game we have for consideration is the Final Image, which seems to just be a black and white VR game. I don't know, is this a... They're saying it's an experimental cinematic VR experiment. If for the name The Final Image, I would think it would be a serial killer taking pictures of his victims. I can't tell. Like, all I see is blackness, really. That's all I see.
Stop copying me! Stop copying me!
As you command.
Yeah. Well, I cannot see anything about this game, and thus I don't see anything good enough about this game, even free, to put it on the follow list. So it's going away. And that's not super surprising, because frankly, all the games are garbage right now.
Why me?
Next game we have to consider is called Anonymous Agony File 1 Containment, which looks like it's an RPG Maker game around the idea of some kind of investigation game. The animation's inconsistent and not that good for the most part. Like, I hate the way every character looks here, with maybe the exception of her, but she's kind of off scale, and maybe this other character here. This is $4.99, and of course not making it to the fall list. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. Animal Crossing delay sees Nintendo shares drop $1 billion in value. This is the story of Nintendo delaying Animal Crossing because they don't want to have, quote, excessive crunch, is what I think. I'm going to take my quotation marks back from that because I'm not even sure if that's a direct quote. But good on Nintendo for not pushing the idea of crunch, and bad on the investors for selling. Inherently, I could care less about the stock value of Nintendo dropping by $1 billion. It'll come back in a week or so, I'm sure, or at least by this time next year. That's just ruthless investors. And without getting into a rant, I still feel like the idea of investing in a company has led to such income inequality that it shouldn't be allowed without some major restrictions. Maybe if you're a heavily vetted and accredited investor, you could invest in things, but the fact that people's 401ks are built around investing in the stock market is a crazy dangerous thing to do, and shouldn't be legal. Like, people's retirement should be government backed by bonds only, instead of gambling on the stock market, which it is just gambling. It really is. It's either insider trading or it's gambling. Take your pick. TechRaptor has an article here. Oculus blocks virtual desktop from streaming Steam games via Steam VR on the Oculus Quest. I don't know if this is an intentional thing, or if this is just a case of it was such a complicated solution, or if this is a case of Oculus Quest in particular trying to have a more curated experience. Certainly, on the face of it, this is not a good idea for the virtual reality universe. They all need as much intercompatibility as possible and as much software as possible. So Oculus Quest would be much better to let the handful of people who would use virtual desktop to stream Steam games via Steam VR on the Oculus Quest. Like, I can't even explain the scenario without losing breath. Like, that's a power user move for sure, so there's no reason to really block it. Okay, apparently I lost again. Moving on. So we're just crashing and burning today on Hearthstone. Speaking of crashing, TechRaptor has an article. Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled receives a free post-launch update, I think is what that should say.
I will fight with honor.
Pretty much a third of all news, or half of all news now, is going to come from TechRaptor. I'm not bringing back Gamma Sutra, and I don't think I'm likely going to get back into looking for much of another news source. So, yeah, TechRaptors, for the most part, are one and only. Gamatsu will get the Japanese games, and Gamma Sutra will get some more weird games. And Gamma Sutra clearly is the next video game journal site on the chopping block between the three of them. I feel like Crash Team Racing Nitro Fueled came out, it says it was released July 3rd, 2019. No, the DLC update is coming out July 3rd, 2019. It will include a new track, unlockable characters, carts, and various customization items. So it seems like it's not a major update with just one track. But I feel like Crash Team Racing hasn't been out that long, so I'm a little bit surprised that this is making headlines. I guess it is, unfortunately, a issue that we're seeing more and more, where games never get any updates or any kind of added content without charging. That used to be a thing for a brief moment there that would happen quite a bit.
Got something to hide?
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an article. EA pledges a new reporting tools and periodic community reports to combat toxicity. EA is still, well, it's been Ubisoft, I think, more than anybody that's been up their own butt about the toxic gamers out there, which, I mean, that's a significant portion of the gaming community in general. And it's really just sites like Polygon and Kotaku that keep whining about toxic gamers. But EA is, I suppose, bending the knee, for lack of a better term, on this. I guess the funny thing is that EA could come out and say, "Oh, our report says, yeah, there's no toxicity at all, or there's very little." There's some, of course. There always was. There always will be. But I can't think of any of the EA games in particular that are doing such a terrible job. I don't think FIFA people are getting barraged by horrible player communities or anything like that. If the player community on FIFA games was terrible, people would stop buying FIFA games. I would think, because FIFA games aren't particularly that good in the first place. I don't think that the Battlefront player base is horribly toxic, other than the fact that they're all mad about how terrible Battlefield or Battlefront is. And it gets really down to the level of ridiculousness. What world do they think they're creating where significant percentages of the video game community is going to get banned and not allowed to play certain games? Like, that's just going to lead to a world of piracy and cracks and like private servers. Sure, it would be nice if in this universe, on this planet Earth, we could make people all be nice and talk nice to each other, but that's not human nature. There's never been human nature. People have been saying nasty things to each other for thousands upon thousands of years, and it has led to angry feelings and conflict for thousands and thousands of years, and there's no way to gamify that, no way to fix that. Imagine for people who are out of school or close to being out of school, imagine if every mean thing you ever said as a kindergartner was put on an actual permanent record. Or worse, you said you were a kindergartner at the playground and you said somebody was stupid, like, and that then labeled you as a toxic person, and then you were kicked out of the school. And I mean, talk about overreactions. Or if what you did as a kindergartner followed you to graduation, and you're not allowed in the advanced placement classes because you said some kid's haircut was stupid in kindergarten. This is the epitome of a lack of realistic thinking and a lack of forgiveness. People forget about forgiveness, and that's kind of just how it is. And that's a shame, certainly. So, I don't know. I don't play multiplayer games, and it really isn't because I've played multiplayer games and found the community is toxic. If anything, the few times I've played online on Borderlands, the community was great. So maybe my experience is not average, but like my very, very few times I've played online with people, I've had perfectly acceptable, fun experiences. So that was years and years ago, so maybe things have changed, and I definitely do assume that there are people out there, but no, it wasn't just Borderlands, because when I had the Xbox 360, I played 1 versus 100 online. I had a perfectly great experience. I played Apples versus Apples a lot, and I had a great experience there. I played Borderlands online. I had a great experience there. There's probably Uno Rush, great experience there. Like, yeah, for a significant year or two, at least with the 360 and Xbox Online Live, I was playing some online elements and having great experiences. Perhaps what ESA needs to do, and I think frankly the ESA needs to, it's time to move the casual at this point. The ESA needs to start doing some counter advertising, have their own internal newsletters, some promotion, some propaganda, for lack of a better term, to say, actually our online experiences are great. Like it, and have some people, paid actors, real testimonials, come out every year and go, yeah, this is awesome, this is great, this is real fun. I think these testimonials probably do get spoken a lot in a friend-to-friend basis. People playing games, telling their friends about playing games. You hear those positive experiences, but they're not making it to a national news press, because the news press is inherently trying to smear all gamers for one reason or another. But yeah, I think the ESA needs to kind of turn its back in general away from what the mainstream video game media is now, in favor of somebody who is more professional, somebody who's more accurate, somebody who has less of an agenda. And I guess that's why streamers are getting more and more early access games, and mainstream journal sites aren't getting as many views as they used to. This, and all this. Then in return. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Cyberpunk 2077 was most viewed on YouTube during E3 2019. Avengers and Star Wars 2. Apparently, this Keanu Reeves character is going to be with you throughout the entirety of the game. Can we get this image to load? No. Come on, seriously? Cyberpunk 2077, Marvel's Avengers, Star Wars, and then something in Halo Infinite, FIFA 20, Final Fantasy. So this is a list of games in particular, not a list of views of things on YouTube. So things like the Frozen 2 trailer, which is number 2 trending last time I looked, seemed to still be winning that. Which that's not inherently surprising that yeah, they blew up the image later down here. So there's something I think to be said about people not knowing what Cyberpunk 2077 is compared to FIFA 20, which people would know. So that explains why there's some big jumps here. I've heard, according to Giant Bomb, that Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order is apparently heavily inspired by a Metroidvania and Dark Souls games, which is not really what it looked like to me. looked like it was more of a Force Unleashed, but maybe people just don't know what Force Unleashed is right these days.
Job's done.
Let's see. Is there anything as far as videos that are super surprising? Nintendo Breath of the Wild 2 is the first Nintendo thing, and it's slightly below the Final Fantasy remake, which is to show that there's really not any big difference between a video on YouTube from E3 directly and the video on YouTube from a Nintendo Treehouse service. Is there anything else on this list worth mentioning? Watchdog Legions is only slightly more watched than Elden Ring, which kind of shows a lack of interest in both of those games. But both of those games are above Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, which is not super surprising because I think most people know what Smash Bros. Is. Rainbow Six Quarantine is at the bottom of the list. Ghostwire Tokyo. Ghostwire Tokyo is the game that had the Japanese lady who's like the creative director that everybody in Japan thought was cute and high energy.
Stop copying me! Stop copying me!
Let's see. Doom Eternal was viewed very little, which is probably again because people know what Doom is. So there's no real need to search that. Borderlands 3 is below Doom Eternal. And this is like the last of the list. And then below Borderlands 3 is Dying Light 2 and Microsoft Flight Simulator, and then Animal Crossing New Horizons.
Unity.
So
Precision. Perfection.
in a list of a bunch of winners, it's a little surprising to see that there's kind of a significant drop off on videos viewed. Let's see how this works. I played that out of order, definitely.
Job's done.
Let's see. Twitch a day ago put out, we're looking into issues with the chat not working, stay tuned. And then they put chat should now be recovering, thanks for the reports. That's a pretty short and sweet Twitch support announcement. It's most definitely the way I think any support Twitter page should probably be. Acknowledge when you get reports, if there's enough reports to really acknowledge, and then just move on and say it's fixed. Chat not working for a short time is not really a big deal. I would also suspect that the reason why chat was not working is because I think some of Amazon's online server stuff was not working, and the PlayStation Now service, which is backed by Amazon's AWS service, was not working, and that is in part why they're going with Microsoft in the future, is because Amazon's server-side services in the background seems to go down quite a lot and not work either for their own company when it comes to Twitch or for PlayStation Now.
Uther
And
versus Jaina.
the hope is that Microsoft's
You asked
Azure
for it.
service will
I
work
will
better,
fight with honor.
or Microsoft's web servers of any sort will work better. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article, Dicey Dungeons is my new roguelike drug. I don't think Dicey Dungeons is out yet. Or it's not on Steam. Yep, they previewed it inside the Indicate booth at E3. So this is really a hype article. This is also worth mentioning, I already see the end of the road here. I can see the Humble Bundle page.
The light protects me.
So we can kind of just burn through this news, and if I don't get everything done on screen, I think it would be a great opportunity for me to take a break and have the let my voice rest. Yeah, that'd be a good move. Gamma Sutra has an article, the state of California investigates riot for systematic gender discrimination. That's good, I suppose, that they're getting investigated and the state of California is taking it seriously. They may very well find nothing. I wouldn't be surprised if that's how most of these investigations end. They may end up finding riot a little bit. This is a continuation of claims that seemed, at least at the beginning, to be somewhat overblown against riot. But California's taking it seriously. Now, the other way you could certainly take that story is that riot is in the state of California is potentially, even the government is run by a bunch of SJWs, and they're promoting a SJW narrative to the point of having a investigation that is unjust. I think it's unfair at this point to assume that that's the case, or that will be the case, and there has been definitely some problems in the past with riot. They are still under investigation and under lawsuit, so I don't think it's realistic to say riot is 100% blameless in this, but I also wouldn't be surprised if there's some exaggerations or unrealistic expectations. It's not unheard of for people to get in jobs where they expect to be treated like royalty, and then they are upset when they're just treated like an employee. Even if they're treated badly, they're often just treated badly like every other employee, and it has nothing to do with gender or anything else like that, or you being singled out for any reason. As somebody who has worked jobs where all the employees were equally treated badly, I could have easily assumed the worst there in many scenarios, and sometimes it was not equal treatment for unlawful reasons, so there was a little bit of that too, but there was a overall just bad work environment for everybody.
The light protects.
Moving on, Gamma Sutra has an obituary here of Guerrilla Games lead producer Patrick Munich has passed away at the age of 44. I bet they don't say what he died from. I wonder. There is definitely danger of getting sick, and thus danger of dying, because you just flew to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is the #1 place to pick up a disease or a flu or a cold from any other place in the world. You're going to be in the airplane, which will affect your immune system, and you can get clots in your bloodstream when you fly an airplane, and I actually know somebody that got a clot and died just because they got on an airplane, and so there's a lot of that. But then there's also at E3 a lot of drinking, probably a lot of drugs, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of depressed people, considering on how much crunch and overwork happens at E3, so, or in the video game industry. So, but this guy may not have been at E3 at all, so I'm making an assumption even that. The obituary continues. Munich joined Guerrilla in 2011 and shaped some of the Dutch studio's most iconic games, initially working on DLC for Killzone 3 before stepping up to produce the PlayStation 4 launch title Killzone Shadowfall. Let's see. So with great shock and sadness, we inform you that our lead producer, Patrick Munich, is no longer with us. We're internally grateful. See, and so, yeah. These obituaries are always terrible about just saying why they died, what they died from, or even saying some basic facts like when was he born, what day, or anything like that. So I can try and scroll down through the messages, but there's just a lot of comments, like deepest sympathy comments. This is really, really bad news. It's just bad news reporting. Come on. Tell me what he died from. Tell me if he was sick. Tell me when he was born. Tell me where he was when he died. Is there anything society can learn from his passing whatsoever? And the only thing I'm left to do, since I have none of these facts, is just speculate. Well, is Guerrilla Games now in a bad position and it's gonna fail miserably as a company? Probably not. Yeah. I've scrolled down.
Engaging TC-130 into dislocator.
I've scrolled down so much and there's just nothing here. Nothing here useful.
Arena's full. Beat it.
Okay, well, moving on. We have no idea. That doesn't work either. Interesting.
Reporting for duty.
So we have a repentance and a noble sacrifice. That's all I've got. Moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Square Enix is considering its own subscription service. Also, Square Enix is supposedly trying to save and archive and re-release every game they've ever made. So if Square Enix had every game they ever made in a subscription service, maybe that would make sense. I could see it being really expensive to try to play the 20 or so Final Fantasy games, particularly some of which were on Game Boy or 3DS or cell phones. So if there was a subscription service that let you play all of those, or at least the console or the PC ones, just being able to do that cheaply or relatively cheaply might make sense. On the other hand, I wouldn't be surprised if this is an example of a subscription service that would be way, way too expensive, and nobody in their right mind would really want to spend the amount that they would charge, like a $20 a month subscription service, which is what I believe Ubisoft is trying to do. That is a joke. Although I wouldn't be surprised if there are some Japanese people that would actually subscribe to a $20 a month Square Enix service. In the end, on the bigger perspective, I don't want to see every single game company have their own subscription service. That sounds crazy and not something I would want to see happen. I don't know what, other than competition and people not being willing to pay that much money, would stop people from trying that. This is effectively what's happening with Netflix and the Disney service, is that
For justice.
That hit that and then do that. Okay.
To battle! Reporting for duty.
Job's done.
Yeah. The way we see Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and the new Disney service, the way, and CBS All Access, the way we're seeing this turn into a mess right now is potentially what we might see with the video game industry. My only hope is that most games still just stay on Steam and I can just purchase them instead of jumping into the fray with a subscription service. It'd be kind of hard to justify a subscription service too, having invested so much into actually owning or trying to own as much as one can the games on Steam.
To battle! Reporting for duty.
I'm really hoping I can win here. There we go. Thank goodness. It's not been a great experience with Hearthstone. And you know, in the back of my head, I thought about installing Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links and just start streaming that today. If I somehow, at some point, could get somewhat done with all the daily quests on Hearthstones. I had that slight twinge, but that's really not possible. It's just never going to happen without me abandoning the Asian and the European account. I'll never have that much time. I'm going to come over here and make sure I've done the Tavern Brawl. I'm pretty sure I've done them all. Paladin and Warrior, Paladin, Priest, so if I overlap this, that still didn't help any. Alright, let's play Paladin. Custom Paladin is the only option. TechRaptor has an article here. Nintendo reportedly pulls some Switch production from China in response to tariff threats. So yeah, we had seen that. TechRaptor has that same article. Seems to be some confirmation. TechRaptor has an article here. Witcher 3 for the Switch will have lower resolutions at 540p and 720p, which means 720p I assume when docked. So you're definitely not going to be having much of an experience visually with the game. And I think there were some tests that said there was a significant amount of pop-in and less foliage, so you're really having a different visual experience than even what you would have had with other console games, console versions of Witcher 3. Arguably the console versions of Witcher 3 were always slightly different
I'll never tell.
to to the PC version, if you could turn the PC version graphics to the maximum, or close to the maximum. TechRaptor has an article here. Atomic Crop's Epic Games Store exclusivity announced, launching later in 2019. So, yet another game that is an Epic Store exclusive. And this is just like a cartoon where the game looks like it's kind of a fast-paced Stardew Valley, but with also top-down twin-stick shooting. Seems crazy, frankly. It seems like this game is trying to have 3 different very weird experiences.
Put this apple on your head.
The light protects me.
Let's see. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Gears of War 5 lobby browser will help you find the online game you're looking for. Which means what exactly, doesn't it? Means. What does that mean though? Isn't that what all the browsers do? Let's see, the screenshot also reveals the number of stats that can be tracked by players looking to jump into one of the game's multiplayer modes. Numerous criteria for game status, ping number of players, and even difficulty is shown in the Twitter screenshot. So it's a lobby browser. So what? I'm not following why you would even write an article here. I think TechRaptor post E3 is just trying to have some content. Well, moving on, Gamasutra has an article. Ghost of Tsushima developer Sucker Punch is seeking a lighting artist. That job is in Bellevue, Washington. Let's see.
I fight.
Thumbs up.
For justice.
Let's see. Here's some actual news Gamasutra has. Amazon Game Studios lays off, quote, dozens of staff. It's not surprising this doesn't happen more during E3 or right after E3. I could see, and it would be very easy for an unscrupulous boss to say, alright, pack up everything, you're all going to E3, and then just like email them or call them and say, you've all been laid off, your access has been restricted from the building, hope you had a good E3, basically. I would not put it past employees to do that. And frankly, I don't really put it past Jeff Bezos and Amazon to do that. This is kind of the problem of allowing monopolies to occur. The statement given is this is the result of regular business planning cycles, and it's part of a reorganization effort to prioritize development of New World, Crucible, and an unannounced project. So yeah, people got fired right around E3. Not super surprising.
The battle
For justice.
And you know, it works both ways too. You could easily have people stay, have half your team stay and not go to E3, and during that week lay off and fire all those people, and have the team come back and go, hey, where are all our co-workers? Let's see. Moving on, Games TechRaptor has an article. You can get Toonstruck for free as part of the Good Old Games summer sale. So Good Old Games is having a summer sale slightly before the Steam summer sale. Toonstruck is a full motion video game that is not particularly good, but is kind of unique for the famous actors in it and its weirdness. I don't think I own Toonstruck on Steam, but getting it free on Good Old Games doesn't interest me.
Reporting for duty.
Moving on, Gamer Switcher has an article. Steam Remote Play now supports game streaming across different networks, which sounds great. Although you probably wouldn't have a great experience with that. The only thing I could imagine is maybe if you were really only like in the same neighborhood of somebody, say your best friend lived next door, I could see that working alright on different networks. But if you're having to effectively VPN or connect to something that is across the city, across the state,
I fight.
across the planet, your lag time is going to be pretty high. But maybe they figured out how to fix this. Fix that. In what I can only take as another example of GameStop just being terrible at doing business and running itself into the ground, this Gamer Switcher article has GameStop is closing down ThinkGeek's standalone online store. So I looked at it earlier today, and most of the exclusive things that interested me were already sold out, and there really was only a couple of exclusive things that interested me. And everything else that's not an exclusive is probably something you could get somewhere else, maybe a little bit more expensively, but it's not like ThinkGeek was cheap by any means anyways. Let's see. So effectively what this is GameStop is abandoning the ThinkGeek line, which had some name recognition and some brand loyalty, I imagine, and just integrating it into the GameStop website alone, which is not helpful. I think GameStop makes a lot less sense when they're not when you're selling merchandise, because then they're not video games. Really ridiculous. Really ridiculous. In fact, I wouldn't have been upset if they had gone the exact opposite way. There's been so much bad press on GameStop these days. Why not just rebrand all of GameStop stores as ThinkGeek stores and redo all the branding that way?
Reporting for duty.
For justice.
Yeah, it seems like it's pretty bad business, and the fact that they're trying to sell everything now probably means they're trying to reduce the amount of new exclusive items or items in general that they have in inventory. And by this time, by Christmas this year, I wouldn't be surprised if GameStop and its subsidiary ThinkGeek are both out of business. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Microsoft announced as a partner for CD Projekt's Good Old Games Galaxy 2.0. A partner in this case, let's see. This means not that Good Old Galaxies is using Microsoft's server-side Microsoft Azure service. It means that if you buy things, I guess, on the Windows 10 store, the games can then show up in the Good Old Galaxies launcher. This is kind of the idea that a lot of people would like. If you can keep everything organized and in one launcher, people would be a lot more willing to buy things from multiple storefronts. And that being said, Steam is about to
For justice.
launch out its new library features and probably its whole new interface. I imagine during the Steam sale that will happen, because there's already been like 2 updates to Steam in the last couple of weeks. And yeah, Microsoft's perfectly happy with that arrangement. That their Windows 10 storefront is garbage, and they know it. So there's nothing really surprising about them being willing to partner with good old Galaxies. The main problem with a good old Galaxy launcher being the one launcher to rule them all is it won't support the Epic storefront, because Epic won't put in the work to support that, and it won't support Steam, because Steam wouldn't want the competition. Moving on, this is a little surprising. TechRaptor has an article. Manga Gamer announces Chapter 7 of Higurashi When They Cry, How visual novel. I did not realize that the Higurashi When They Cry visual novel series was episodic this way. But apparently, yes, it is an episodic thing. Apparently, it's a murder mystery story set in a fictional village where each year someone is murdered and someone else disappears. Yeah, I think I saw an anime like that too, so maybe the anime was based off the visual novel. Alright. So, that potentially might be a visual novel for me to cover, because if there are 6 other games there, I could go for potentially 6 to 12 years covering this series. And there would be some
The light protects me.
serialized logic to covering it once a year. Alright. Normally I don't talk about Nutaku games too much, but I believe this Nutaku game called Booty Farm, which there's nothing being shown as far as nudity in this, but there's definitely going to be some of that in the game. This game has reached 100 million players. Maybe it's a free-to-play game. That might explain something like that. But in a world where it seems like having 300,000 units sold is a big deal, and having 1 million units sold is a big deal. If Booty Farm really did get 1 million players, it goes to show that there is definitely still some major popularity of adult games out there, and people are willing to play them. So yeah, this really is a story of never forget and never underestimate the power of a lewd game, even if it is free to play. I don't know if it's free to play or not, and I'm not really willing to put in the research to find out, but that is something to take, something interesting at least. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Exan Ships, which looks like a low effort space game of zero visual appeal. It's $10.99 in English only, so nothing there.
I fight.
Let's see, we already talked about that. TechRaptor has an article. Super Mario Maker 2 will let you party with your friends post-launch. After saying you couldn't play with friends, they have gotten enough feedback to hear people really don't like that, and so Nintendo is promising to fix that post-launch, which is not super surprising.
I fight.
I mean, that's pretty much all you could do, or just stick to your guns and lose sales. Next game we have on Steam is called Yet Another Hero Legend. This clearly is a low effort Chinese game, if I was to guess. Yeah. It's $1.39 discounted. It's English and Chinese. Yep. No surprise there. I've really been over backwards and put a lot of bad games. For this week, I've been curating quite a lot, and now I'm going back to not really curating as much because there wasn't any news to talk about.
I fight.
And it kind of goes to show that there really isn't too many instances where there is actual video game news that needs to be reported. So if everybody is on a plane heading home, you will, from E3, yeah, if all the news reporters are not at their desks, no news happens. Because it is really just the news reporters that are either making up the news in video game, in the video game world, or choosing when news breaks. Whereas you can get breaking bits of news that just happens on something like Reddit at any point, because it's just one person needs to find the tweet, and that tweet needs to get to the front page of Reddit, and that's pretty much it. Next game we have to consider here is called Nevermore 8 through 13. This looks like a visual novel, maybe a Japanese visual novel, maybe some kind of combination of that, but it feels old to say the least. And English is not supported. It's $5.99 and it's Chinese only. So yeah, this might be a collection of Chinese visual novels that are somewhat good by a Chinese scale at least. Or it might be that it's just one visual novel and 8-13 means something else completely. Like that, those numbers could be translated into some kind of Chinese phrase or something, or it could be a date that I'm not recognizing.
To battle!
Wow.
Let's see. Next game we have to consider is Informal Detective. This looks like another Chinese visual novel. At least this one's widescreen. Again, does not look bad. English not supported at $1.49, Chinese again. It doesn't look great by anything. The art style certainly doesn't compare to a Japanese animator's art style, but it still looks better than most Western animators' art styles. Yeah.
Well played.
Of course, with English not supported, there's kind of nothing more you can do.
Reporting for duty. To battle!
Let's see.
I live for justice.
Well,
battle!
yep.
To
I
battle!
think I've lost again. Next, we have a game on Steam called My Girl Love Story, another Chinese game. This is where I think Chinese game developers might potentially excel, is if they have a penchant for showing actual live-action video that might work. But the problem is the live-action video in this game is probably extremely short and pretty exploitative. When you look at the screenshot, this is supposed to be get past the Chinese censors while still being provocative, sucking on a lollipop, holding stuffed dogs, blowing out a cake, lying so as to show cleavage, or taking a picture specifically when she's bending over to show cleavage. This is one of those pretend you have a girlfriend style games. Kind of like how I'm pretending to try to that I have skill at Hearthstone. This game doesn't support English language. It's $9.99. Says it has Chinese full audio support. I wouldn't be surprised if it's less than 20 minutes of actual content. Next game we have to consider is called Golden Fall, which looks like a garbage top-down exploration digging game, for lack of a better term. I don't know what you would call this by modern descriptions. They're saying it's an RPG. It's $2.99 English only. It's garbage, obviously. Let's see. Next game we have to consider is called Forever War, which looks like another Chinese game. Although this one's going for a black and white Game Boy aesthetic, so there might be something slightly interesting in that. I bet English is not supported though. $3.99. This kind of goes to show how disconnected the Chinese video game industry is. Like, the fact that it doesn't occur to them to not announce games the day after E3. The fact that there was literally no Chinese game, to my knowledge, shown at E3 at all. No Chinese companies that came over. Nothing like that. This certainly would be the year in which Chinese companies would be signing up to come over to E3 and show off their products, but because of the trade war. But they really don't do anything like that, and haven't yet. Where Sony has done their little project to fund Chinese companies, and Tencent in particular could have major League of Legends and just Tencent games in general. They could have a big old booth, they could have a stage presence, and yet that doesn't happen. So if they want to do business and act like they are a major competitor in the video game industry, I think them coming to E3, at least in a small part, would make sense.
Ready for action.
Forever War though is not English supported, $3.99 Chinese only, so yeah. Another game I would have easily curated. Next game we have here is called My University. I'm gonna look at this publisher and see if it's the same publisher that's publishing all these games. This 1, 2, 3, and then a bunch of Asian characters. This looks like another visual novel, although it does seem to have some different interfaces. Maybe it's closer to a dating sim game than an actual visual novel. It's $7.99. English not supported, Chinese only. This doesn't look terrible. They do feel like they're getting better.
Close the gates.
Let's see, hit that.
The battle.
That. Next game we have on Steam is called Fat Prisoner Simulator 2, which clearly is a troll game. And if we look at the screenshot, it's just dark screenshot syndrome upon dark screenshot syndrome. This is 84 cents discounted, English only. So, in comparison to all the terrible Chinese games we've seen, there's still certainly terrible Western, US-centric games that exist also. So, everybody has the opportunity and the ability to do something terrible. It's just how many of them actually try it, and how many of them actually get on Steam, I guess. And, next game we have to consider is Flying Slime, which this phrase next game we have to consider is, I think, something I'll start using more, and because I picked it up when I started doing follow list cleanup. The other thought is maybe I should just simplify my in-screen banter. That there's certainly a lot I say during the in-screen.
The light protects
I
me.
want to say all those things, certainly, but it is definitely just a lot of the same thing over and over again, and it's not an effective banter or closing wrap-up. It doesn't actually get people to like or subscribe or watch, but then I don't get any views anyway, so if nobody's watching the video, they can't see the end of the video to subscribe when I ask them. Yeah, this game, Flying Slime, looks like it is just a kind of low-effort idea of a Super Meat Boy platformer. It doesn't interest me visually. It's $5.99, English only. Yeah, it looks like it's just a Super Meat Boy type clone.
For justice.
Reporting for duty. Job done.
Let's see. Next game we have to consider is called Monsters of Kanji, which looks like an RPG maker in this paint game. There's nothing visually interesting about this. Let's see. $8.99 discounted, English only. Interesting. Why would you have a game called Monsters of Kanji and not support Japanese or Chinese? That seems crazy. Well, yeah. Regardless, the game does not look
Put your
interesting.
faith in the light.
For justice.
So it's not making it to the follow list. Next game we have is Super Friends Party, which looks like a Mario Kart clone with
you
other
want?
gameplay elements. So it's more of a Mario Party clone. I don't think that there's enough visual polish here to think that this game would ever actually be good. It's early access, free to play, English only. I don't think this ever is going to raise to a high quality bar.
Put this apple on your
For
head.
A
justice.
minion with taunt is in the way.
Alright, yeah, hit that. Do that.
Reporting for
Do
duty.
that. Do that. Seriously, first victory. I hope I get like a quick disconnect in the next game. Man, this is a slow day for victories. Seems like maybe some weirdness is coming back to Steam. The Expression Amriolato Steam release indefinitely delayed due to, quote, increasingly confusing review process. Which, this is Manga Gamer saying this. And Manga Gamer
Fight with honor.
seems to have been doing a all ages version on Steam and then a uncensored version on their own storefront, and that seemed to have been working, and it seemed to be more of a advertising thing or a push to try to get more consumers to go to Manga Gamer site than anything else.
Well met.
If this is some backsliding on Steam's part and they're not approving games that are uncensored again, that's weird. It's not hugely surprising though, because Steam does still kind of feel like it is
Put this apple on your
got
head.
no real leadership or no real rules enabled in it, so who knows. Let's see. The quote here is, today we were scheduled to release the expression Amaralto. The Steam news begins. A linguistic marvel of localization. It's an educational title that teaches players the language of Esperanto through a touching story centered around the idea of communication, social connections, and building lasting, meaningful relationships with others through mutual understanding. Alright, so far so good. That doesn't even sound like a adult game at all. But then again, this is Manga Gamer saying that. For all we know, the game has nothing to do with that. It's weird to try to teach Esperanto. Like, Esperanto in particular has not been adopted well enough by anybody to be a good language to try to learn. The concept I applaud, but the adoption rate is just too low. There's another quote. Despite its high educational value, Valve has decided that its current form the content is unsuitable for Steam. The news post continues. We're working with them to try and navigate our way through the increasingly confusing review process. Another post categorizes the new game review process on Steam as, quote, vague and increasingly unpredictable, which I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly the case. It really does feel like they kind of just let random, potentially employees that are doing their working out of India and barely speak English. Seems like they have some random low-level contractors look at games. Let's see. But this might also just be somewhat hogwash. In the meantime, they're selling the game through their own storefront and actively seeking out other places to sell it, including DRM, free digital game distributors, Good Old Games. So this might be more of a case of Manga Gamer just being unhappy with Steam for Steam taking a 30% cut. There's another quote here. Valve claims that the title, quote, sexualizes minors, which is quite frankly absurd and discriminatory. The expression Amarillo is an educational title and it has no sexual content, period. So it is apparently the art style. That being said, the link here to Manga Gamer is labeled as not safe for work. So, yeah. It seems like maybe the person who had a problem before has been allowed to get a bug up his butt, for lack of a better term, again, about anime-esque looking characters.
For justice.
And I think Manga Gamer may have them right over the barrel on this argument. And hopefully this isn't the beginning of a 2.0 scenario. So let's look at it for ourselves and see. That pause thumbnail just show the character. These characters seem not to be wearing school uniforms, which was the thing before. They do use the phrase love, so this is maybe a tale of young love more than anything else. But this isn't particularly this doesn't particularly look any different than any other Japanese visual novel, and these characters don't look particularly old. That might have been a school uniform. These characters actually very much look like they're being depicted as high school, college age by the anime style. There's a picture of them kissing, there's a picture of them bathing together, there's definitely some stuff here that manga gamers being deceptive about. This is you can't really say there's no sexual content when in the trailer, the opening video here, you see the characters kissing each other on the mouth. This does not translate to a deep, respectful friendship kiss in most people's minds when you're kissing someone open mouth. So yeah, we've got some dishonesty happening here on manga gamer side, definitely too. With manga gamer being dishonest, so inherently, I still can't agree with Steam's move here to disallow it for free speech reasons. But I think Manga Gamer is playing with fire by being dishonest. Just looking at this screenshots, you only see one image, but looking at the intro video alone, you can see, yes, this is a standard visual novel, and unless they gave Steam a censored version, and then Steam looked at the uncensored version and scaled it by that, I can't agree with what they're claiming. And the Esperanto stuff seems to be complete and total BS in this case. Maybe they did translate the game to Esperanto and that's how they're selling it, but this being an educational game versus a visual novel does not line up with the images I'm seeing.
Can escape my fury.
I will fight with honor.
So we may quickly find that Manga Gamer is politely asked to leave Steam, which would actually lower the number of games on my wish list as far as visual novels by a little bit, but not by much, because most of Manga Gamer's visual novels are not good anyways.
The light protects me.
So, yeah. I'm leaning to some optimism that this isn't a case so much of as Steam becoming regressive on their will allow everything that isn't straight up trolling policy, and it's more of a case of Manga Gamer pushing the line and then reacting badly when Valve says, actually, you're going too far. I guess inherently, though, it still does really get back to the same old, where it is somebody still in Valve, somebody still works for Valve that has a problem with anime games and visual novels that have nudity in them. And that game in particular, like, the characters don't get animated very much differently ever. So, like, there's really not a lot of extremely old people in or characters in anime style ever. So, there's really no way to say you're supporting the industry at all if you're going to say even those characters that look pretty old are considered minors. I don't know if it's really worth mentioning, but there was a brief outrage on Reddit of a bad judgment, in my opinion, where a father was accused of raping his 19-year-old daughter, and the law is written so badly in Japan, as it is written badly, it seems, in many European countries, where you have to struggle and physically fight back, otherwise it's not considered rape. And so they let the guy off when they probably shouldn't. and even the Japanese people are not happy about that law, and they're protesting it. So it's an embarrassment on Japan, and perhaps that maybe affected this decision, but I doubt it would, and it really shouldn't. Yeah, the law should get changed. Like, it is written badly. But there's also a lot of other loaded statements that people were trying to say, that for people speaking without real knowledge, and I too could easily start speaking without real knowledge, but trying to blame an entire country for a bad law, or say the entire country is like this one father, is not a fair and realistic thing to say. These things happen everywhere. They happen in the United States all the time. And yeah, they just don't get reported about it very often. In fact, it's often very common, at least in the United States, to report about things that happen outside of the United States that happen all the time inside the United States and never get reported on it, to make, at least subconsciously, to make people think that the US is better off, when it really isn't. Crimes happen everywhere on the planet all the time. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Valve's standalone auto chess clone Dota Underlords is already here. I think you have to have purchased the battle pass for this, but yeah, if you're a Dota 2 battle pass owner, you can download the new game from the dashboard right now. For everyone else, the open beta should start at some point next week. So yeah, this is a case of them being first to market compared to the Steam Epic Store, the Epic Store exclusive one that's going to come out. And I believe there's even a third auto chess game that's going to come out. So there's competition is kind of high to get auto chess out and good, and have yours be the one that people want to play. We already talked about this, but Gamasutra has an article. Square Enix is working to preserve and release its entire game library, which is not super surprising. I think in a slow, not very motivated way, most companies are probably trying to do something like that. There really isn't any big surprise there. TechRaptor has an article here. Don't Nod's psychological adventure thriller Twin Mirror has been delayed until 2020. So this, I think, officially is the first game to be delayed after E3, but almost certainly not the last. This guy's shirtless, so I'm gonna watch this video off screen, but I am slightly interested in seeing what's going on here with this. I don't really know what Twin Mirror is. He wasn't just shirtless, he was clothesless. Was Twin Mirror another kind of Twin Peaks style game? I think it is. Yeah. This is the one where he has like a hallucination of a twin that follows him around throughout the whole game. And it is heavily Twin Peaks inspired.
Stop copying me! Stop copying me!
Okay. Okay, that didn't work. Let's see. Gamatsu has an article, Puzzle and Dragon's Gold, Japanese teaser.
We must
Website launched. So yeah, Puzzle and Dragon's Gold seems like it might be a big thing. Didn't really know Puzzles and Dragons had any kind of mascot or character, but I guess it does. Makes some sense, I guess. Gamasutra has an article, Get a Job, New World Interactive is hiring an art director. That's in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. They didn't list any jobs that I saw during E3. We already talked about that guy dying. This is a blog that doesn't really matter to anybody except for people who are publishing games on Steam. Talking about how to make your Steam page really good. That's not really an article that I think I need to read as I'm scrolling through it.
Why do you call?
My shield for Argus.
The light protects me.
Take that out. Take that out.
Job done.
Let's see. Gamasutra has an article here. Get a Job. Backflip Studios is hiring a senior cloud software engineer. That is in Boulder, Colorado. This will be the last game regardless of what we play on the European account. And I'm just going to kind of quickly jump into the Asian account and then I think we're going to be done. I'm going to just have to play off screen quite a bit because we're just not getting victories today. It was a bad day for victories. Gamasutra has an article. Next Games is making a location-based Stranger Things mobile games. We had seen this image, but I didn't really know what it was. Seems like it's very much a Pokemon Go style game, although they're calling it an RPG puzzle title. Which I don't know how that really integrates.
Into the breach.
I fight.
Let's see.
Nothing.
We have any spell.
The light shall burn you. Almost out of time. So many hits.
Let's see.
Double time and double pay.
I don't think I'm gonna win here, but I'll keep on trying. We have a Shenmue 3 article here on their Patreon that they put up. A message from YeezNet, Epic Games, and Deep Silver. Hello everyone, we want to make sure that the backers are aware we're listening to your concerns. We kindly ask all fans to have some patience. We're currently at E3 demoing the game and need to get back to our respective offices to assess the situation and together find a way forward to justify your trust you have placed in us. Thank you for your patience and support. What this basically means, and what this has to do with anything, is that Kickstarter's backed this game with the promise of Steam keys. Now it's an Epic exclusive. Nobody's getting Steam keys. People have asked for refunds and been rejected refunds. In a lot of cases, if you kickstarted something long enough ago, you couldn't dispute the charges on a credit card or anything like that, because after like 90 days that's locked in and done. You could try to dispute it with the bank, but Kickstarter's not stepping in to so far to do anything about it, and it feels like a screw job to some people who are really upset about it it's saying it was going to be a Steam exclusive, and they're making an argument that's somewhat valid that if it weren't for the fact that there was Kickstarter in the first place, they wouldn't have been able to secure funding through a publisher. If they hadn't secured funding from a publisher, the game wouldn't have gotten good enough looking to then get more backers. And if it hadn't been for all those backers again and the promises of Steam, they wouldn't have been then able to do the bait and switch and become a Steam exclusive, which is what the publisher, I assume, is demanding, but I'm sure the creators doesn't care either. I'll have to come back and do this daily quest later. Let's switch over to the Asian account. So yeah, people are not happy with Kickstarter, which is kind of what it always boils down to in Kickstarter. I wanted to show off the Pokemon logo. I was talking about, I think last stream, how they've kind of gone with a gendered style here. This is not the image I saw. The image I saw was basically this, but then the boy character that you can play as, I think you can play as a boy or girl in either game, but the boy default character was over here with Pokemon Sword definitely being kind of a phallic object with a blue masculine color to it, where the blue and yellow of Pokemon's logo has always been that way, and then the sword is this stylized swish slicing through the name. And then the picture I saw had the default female character over here for Shield. The Shield is kind of, I don't know what the word for female phallic is, but it's pretty much that. It is a red pinkish logo in the title. The logo here is coming to certainly sharp triangular points, which could be certainly taken as female version of phallic too. Yeah, sure, this is supposed to be a pattern, and then little spikes here. I suppose they're supposed to be the spikes of a shield, although there's no spike here at all. That's really, in my opinion, less than more than just a subconscious thing. But I doubt there's anything in the game to be concerned about or upset with. It's just, I think somebody snuck something in. Let's see, now Paladin or Priest. So yeah, I just have to play another Paladin or Priest game. Let's try Priest this time. More important news than my ranting. Gamma Sutra has an article. Nintendo is evaluating, in quote, game streaming technology. That's not surprising. I wouldn't be surprised if they're working with something like Microsoft and Project X Cloud. I wouldn't be surprised if they're also working with Stadia and Google, or if they're trying something completely separate. In the end, Nintendo's almost 100% loser when it comes to online services, so even if they did have a game streaming service, it's not particularly going to be anything that's great, in the same way that their online service is not particularly great. And I don't know what you could really do to fix that. Gamma Sutra has an article here. E3 2019 saw less attendees than last year. It dropped slightly since 2018, and I don't even think that 2018 was that good. So 66,100 attendees versus 69,200 in 2018. Last year's conference at 2018 was the highest turnout since 2005, but wasn't also last year's contest really the first year that people could get into it without being part of the press.
Right away.
Where you could just be a normal gamer and go to E3. So, yeah, it still feels like E3 is dying to me. I think it'll stick around for a lot longer than many people think. This is probably a game, a conference that will stick around for at least another decade in some form or fashion. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's not anywhere as important as it used to be. Next we have a game to consider, Blaster Master Zero. This is finally out. I can put this on the follow list. This might be a game I'm willing to play. It might not be. There's some weirdness with it, but if the reviews tell me it's good, I'm willing to kind of try it. I feel like I may have said the exact opposite, however, about that game before.
Right away.
Let's see. Next we have a game on Steam called Chippy, which looks like a bullet hell top-down shooter. I remember seeing a game kind of like this where you would shoot the edge of things and they would break off and you would try to destroy bits and pieces of a spaceship. I don't think it was this game though, I just think I've seen this concept before. Still not really my style of game though. $13.49 with a 10% discount. English only. Yeah. Still a twin stick bullet hell shooter. Not my type of game. I'm not putting it on the wish list for me.
I must consider.
Right away.
Next game we have to consider is called Digger Man, which I think we already saw a terrible looking Digger game today. It's odd to see two in one week. Yeah, this looks like a bad concept of Dig Dug, or maybe there's something here that's slightly more rhythmic about it. $4.49. Yeah, this is like Dig Dug if you were gonna make a race game out of it, and yeah, I think it's probably a mobile game where you're just tapping left and right a lot. It's $4.49 discounted. I don't think I need to put that on the follow list.
Whispers everywhere.
Right away.
Next we have a game on Steam just called Ebola, which probably is a low-effort horror first-person shooter game. A lot of dark screenshot syndrome here. See, this is the kind of game that in the old days I would have said, oh, this looks good enough, this might be good enough, and I put it on the follow list. Now I can recognize that no, it's not in any way good enough, and it's not going to have any relevancy. Come on, video. Start jumping forward. Yeah, cannot see anything here. Early access, $9.37. English and Russian as the full audio. Two full audio things. This is almost certainly a cheap Russian game. See. Next game we have to consider is called Dissolving, which looks like it's a pencil sketch visual novel horror game. I kind of like this art style. I think if with more practice this artist could probably do something good, but what we're seeing in the game is basically nothing. This looks like a low-effort Chinese game. It's free, supports English and Russian, so I was wrong. It's a low-effort Russian game. And I literally have like one more game to cover. So last game we have to look at is called Flipside Genesis, which looks like a space game that I have no faith in actually being a finished product in a game. Like, pretty much I wouldn't have faith in any space game that wasn't from a AAA publisher. Flipside Genesis is early access, 40% off for $9.59, English only. Yeah, I don't think that there's a game that would ever emerge from that that's worth playing. What's the point of this character being in this deck? It will never be used. And that puts me at the Humble Bundle. Let me look and see if there's any new Humble Bundles. There's a couple Humble Bundles that are ending fairly soon, it looks like, or the plugin is wrong. All of the Humble Bundles I've seen have ended. Just reload this page just to see. Yeah, I needed to reload the page. So what have we got as far as games? There's a Streaming 2019 bundle that has nothing to do with games, and that is it. So there's no game bundle. That's not super surprising, frankly. Let's see, where are we now? Play more cards, play more paladin, priest things. I'm gonna look at my Twitter feed and see what new bits of information are out, but I don't think that there will be any new bits of information worth mentioning. Bethesda is porting Fallout Shelter to Tesla cars. From what I hear, Tesla cars in particular have very little storage space. So the Cuphead port that was coming to Tesla cars actually is only the first island because of that. Bandai Namco has trademarked Ring of Emperors, which means nothing. Really. And I don't believe there's any other news bits. It's kind of a slow day, slow Friday for news. Not a big surprise there. The only other game that came out is this game called Orc Colony, which looks like a tower defense, Fallout Shelter type game. Should I be generous and put this on the follow list as a Fallout Shelter clone? I don't know, there might be something here. It's early access, it's $8.99. Yeah. I'm probably being way too generous, but I'll put this on the follow list. But otherwise, there's no news to talk about, and this is the perfect opportunity to take a break. We've been going 2 hours, so really I'm only getting an hour break compared to normal. But this is a good point to wrap up the stream. So I'll play a lot off screen and hopefully be more refreshed and relaxed. I'm pretty relaxed right now, but more refreshed in general on Monday. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos because that helps me with YouTube. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a bunch of links down below. They've allegedly changed how the notification bell works a little bit so you can better realize that you haven't clicked the notification bell enough. If you're seeing a notification bell that's hollow instead of being filled in with lines above it, you're not getting all notifications from that channel. If you're seeing a line through it, you're not getting any notifications whatsoever. If it's hollow, you're getting personalized notifications, which means YouTube decides when you get notifications, which is basically never. If you want to support my channel further, there's a link down below to Patreon. The Steam Summer Sale is coming up, so that would be a great time to also friend me on Steam and gift me a game off my wish list while the games are cheap. Thank you for watching. Have a good